Kelsey, if you'll make sure we're unmuted. Cool. All right.
Okay. Are we we're streaming?
Streaming and recording.
Great. I will call to order this special meeting of the Moab City Planning Commission on June 4th, 2025 at 5:17 p.m. Apologies for the late start, everyone. We're having some technological issues here in the chamber that we got sorted out thanks to Summer, our city recorder, for that help. In attendance tonight, we have planning commissioners Carolyn Conant, Miles Lofton, Jill Tatton, and myself, Kai Marenfeld, as well as city staff Johanna Blanco, Corey Shirtleff, and Kelsey Garcia. And our city council liaison, Luke Wojciechowski, is here as well. Otherwise, we do not have anyone else in chambers. So I will say that we do not have anyone here to be here for our first item, which is citizens to be heard. We also didn't receive any comments online about anything on our agenda this evening for this special meeting. Next item of business is approval of minutes from our last meeting, which was on May 5th, 2025. We have minutes in the packet if anyone has any amendments or notes. Otherwise, we can entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the draft minutes from the regular meeting of the Moab City Planning Commission on May 8th, 2025.
All right, we have a motion from Carolyn. Is there a second?
I'll go ahead and second that.
All right, and a second from Jill. Any further discussion?
I'd like to note that it says May 5th, not May 8th. Am I wrong?
Ooh,
It
good
says
catch.
May 8th on the minutes.
Yeah,
but it says May
minute.
5th
Oh, okay.
in
So
the
May 5th on the
agenda.
agenda. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So this would be from May 5th, May 8th.
May 8th.
So thanks to the note, Mile, that the agenda says May 5th, but the meeting was actually on May 8th, and the minutes do accurately reflect that. All right. All in favor of approving the minutes from the May 8th regular meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Minutes approved unanimously 4-0. Next item of business is our action items for this evening. Item 4.1 is first, which is consideration and possible recommendation of Moab Ordinance number 2025-09, an ordinance to annex the property located at 602 Cermak, Moab, Utah 84532, located currently in unincorporated Grand County. This is a discussion and possible action on this ordinance for annexation. City staff, Corey and Johanna, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, so we have two very similar action items this evening. So my presentation and our briefing is going to cover both at the same time. Okay, we are looking today for a recommendation to the City Council about the annexation of 602 Cermak and 611 Cermak. First, we have the vicinity map here and some details about 206 Cermak. Currently located in the rural residential zone of Grand County and proposed to be annexed into the city as a C3 central commercial zone. Here we have the vicinity map of 611, similar details. So a pre-annexation agreement has already been agreed upon and approved. In this pre-annexation agreement, the zoning has already been decided to be C3. The use has already been decided. They can change the use, but its initial use is the use that's been added to the C3 zone especially for an ability center for overnight guests of the specific type. Other things about the pre-annexation agreement, the whole project needs to meet LEED requirements, which are a bundle of environmental requirements. And any newly created residential units would need to be designated for active employment. So what we're really considering today as the Planning Commission is whether the annexation of these two properties fits within the general plan future annexation map, if the parcels are within that border, and also the future land use map, if the zone C3 seems in line with that future land use map. Since there already is a pre-annexation agreement, these things have been checked already, but we are double checking tonight and then forwarding a recommendation. Here are the site plans that were submitted as part of the pre-annexation agreement. Just a rough idea of what would be going in there. They have yet to go through the development review process. So this is subject to change. Here is a graphic with painfully small writing, comparing and contrasting the zones. On the left there, they have the zone that they are currently at, and then C3, we can see the buffering requirements, the height and setbacks, parking, and the allowed uses. They are drastically different zones, as one is residential and one is commercial. Okay.
I'll jump in with just a little bit of additional background. So specific to the annexation of these properties and pre-annexation agreement conditions, I think were profiled nicely. Speaking a little bit more to the proposed uses in where that original text amendment had come in, and that's where the Planning Commission had spent a lot of time developing that specific language is for adaptive recreational service providers that did have that additional accommodations for qualifying participants, extensive language and parameters going how am I trying to say this? Use parameters being set for the review procedures to ensure that that is a verified and qualified use. There were, as the public hearing notices have gone out into the community, a number of posts and kind of communication around the community as this is the first use that's coming up, kind of identifying this is just a way to work around overnight accommodations. So before the commission tonight, and we'll talk before the city council, when they review this, that is obviously not the case. And we have already really, I think, established how that structure works. So just want to reiterate once again for anybody that's maybe watching, how this use is actually being coordinated. Towards the process piece, typically within a standard annexation process without a pre-annexation agreement, the Planning Commission's role is really rooted in an administrative review of the general plan, just what was profiled. Do the proposed property or properties align with the guiding documents housed within the general plan, and then what would be our recommendation to the planning committee or city council based on those requirements and statutory regulations. With that pre-annexation in place, it is basically the elements that planning commission would have had some discretionary say in have already been premeditated in that. So we are a bit preempted by that. However, the administrative matrix that was included in the packet showing process for pre-annexation in city council identifies PC as the advisory body for those. The subtext from the state code says the city, or excuse me, the planning commission may review this. That was really taken directly from state code, saying we should have established, if they have pre-annexation, whether or not we would still have this meeting. We've opted to say, let's bring it before planning commission to ensure there's no question that we're going through our procedural options, even though it was a may, not a shall. So it's a bit of a redundant exercise that we're seeing tonight. I didn't want us to get too well into the weeds, but did want to profile that we're going through this to ensure we're meeting those standards, although we're not asking you too many questions. Is if the zoning's already established, conditions of the use already established in that pre-annexation, and then additional development standards. So we're pretty limited in what we can actually recommend, other than, yes, this does appear to confirm and continue those reviews that have already been done through the pre-annexation. This is something in the future we may look at, all pre-annexations having a planning commission process, so that planning commission is a part of these at some point, but maybe putting you guys into a more appropriate place where you do have a little bit more involvement in how those petitions are actually being processed through before the pre-annexation agreements are complete. I apologize, that wasn't terribly succinct, but I think I hit on all the points I was really wanting to touch on. I did have a flow chart of our annexation process. It's the same one we've been using for quite a while, so hopefully we're somewhat familiar with it, just to show where we are in this process, and how it is nearing kind of the midpoint of completion towards city council approval. So at the public hearing, and if there are no other objections between now and that public hearing, they'll probably be lined up correctly to certify and then annex on the 10th of June, coming up next week. So if there's any questions about procedures, process, or aspects of the code, I'd be happy to follow up with those. And then Johanna's done quite a deep dive into the specifics of the content. We can forward those questions, but we'll leave it both those pieces up to the commission for discussion. And then we also may have a recommendation that if you'd like, we could advance the motion for both of these as kind of one single motion to approve both recommendations.
There are separate pre-annexation agreements for each property.
Yeah, it's from the root that there are two separate property owners. So while it is the same overall intended use at the end of the day, it was necessary that we went through kind of two tandem concurrent processes. Do we have a site plan? Maybe worth toggling back to that really quick. So within the site plan, we can see, again, this is through pre-annexation agreements coordinating with our legal review. It's essential that we get some sort of site plan, as good of a site plan as we can possibly imagine, but anything that is on here has not gone through review, as Johanna said. So there is no entitlement, no vesting. There is really no real grab because we have not actually gone through a site plan review. We have done a pre-application review to establish what type of process we might be looking at, what type of thresholds for regulations, but none of these elements or displays are necessarily what will be there, but is the concept. So with that being said, you'll see this selection of property is the build out. This, you can see the little dotted line there onto the left side of this development screen is the actual property. So there's the bigger section off to the right, the bigger box, if you will, is already within city limits. So upon annexation, they're going to consolidate the smaller jog polygon to the bottom left, as well as this guest house, but consolidate these to allow the development to happen. When that happens, the zoning in the majority of this parcel is actually R3. Well, at least in this section is R3. It's actually R3 multi-household residential zone, and then RA1 agricultural residential zone as it starts to lead up the cliff face. Part of these discussions and what was meditated during the pre-annexation is that they will also be coming through to consolidate the zoning into C3 across the entire parcel to allow for a unified development pattern. The R3 would not comply or work with this. So this was meant to be a concurrent process to rezone the existing city parcel C3. So as it annexes in, the remainder of the parcel will also be rezoned. We're now, as we're going through, upon annexation, we'll hold the public hearing and go through that additional zone change process. So this won't be the last time we're seeing aspects of this. And then eventually down the road, it's going to come back before Planning Commission for its development review of the actual site plan. So again, further down the road, not necessarily a consideration for tonight, but teeing you up for what would be the remainder of the process. Thank you. Jump back to motion.
So, yeah, I think point of order, it makes sense to me to continue to keep them separate because that is how I announced this portion of the discussion.
Totally.
as Item 5.1,
Mm-hmm.
or excuse me, 4.1, and then we can move on to 4.2,
Sure.
note back to the discussion.
Sure.
So it would just be that first, or excuse me, the second motion for this item right now. The 09 ordinance.
I mean, this all feels pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Everything has been reviewed. So I'm happy to make a motion for this first one. I move to forward a positive recommendation to Moab City Council on Moab Ordinance number 2025-09, an ordinance to approve the annexation of property located at 602 Cermak, Moab, Utah 84532.
Okay, we have a motion from Miles. Is there a second?
I'll go ahead and second that.
And a second from Jill. Any further discussion on this first portion of our action items this evening? Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay, next, we will move on to action item 4.2, which is consideration and possible recommendation of Moab Ordinance number 2025-10, an ordinance to annex the property located at 611 Cermak, Moab, Utah 84532, located in unincorporated Grand County. Again, discussion and a possible action. This is dovetailing, of course, with the discussion we just had. In fact, they are intertwined, but it is a separate item because they are separate properties with separate property owners. If anyone is confused. Anything else to add, y'all?
The pre-annexation agreements for these two properties were slightly different in the conditions of what the intended uses were. So both of them had AEH components, one of them being active housing for staff, and then the other being this commercial development with the qualifying participants quasi accommodations, we'll call it. So one is going to be actively AEH. The other is if it were to ever in some form convert to residential housing or some form of housing would have to be AH. And I'm not sure the lead standards, and it's again kind of a flip where the new site plan will have these lead standards. And I think it's if the guide house, if you will, ever redevelopments, it may also have the lead standards, but I don't recall that specifically. I think it was just the new construction. So I might have to check.
Yeah,
Not sure.
I was only reading drafts.
Okay.
To be fair.
But again, the AH conditions, one will be active, one will be future if ever. So
Yep.
we saw that with this, the Shumway annexation was similar thing. It was a commercial build, but if it ever went residential, we do have that deed restriction on there.
Yes, so the last motion or last item was the residential or was the guide housing. And the current item is the commercial component that has the new adaptive recreational service provider stipulation applying to it, correct? Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff or wanna? Oh, anyone feel like making a motion? Forward.
Yeah, I'm happy to see the AEH and sustainability components of the pre-annexation agreements. And was curious about the 50-year term for the AEH covenant, like how that term was decided upon.
As
That's-
opposed to 99 or a different threshold.
That's what's in the ordinance, right?
It is as far as the use parameter
Mhm.
ordinance, and we've had a number of DAs that have had variable timeframes ranging from 99 years to some I think may just be draft, but as low as 30. And so the 50-year mark it's a lending mechanism. At a certain number of years restricted becomes more challenging from a lending perspective. So that's where we're seeing the 50 from an annexation policy standpoint has become our standard for annexation. Although we've had some developments pitching a lower threshold for specific lending purposes, so 30. So we don't have as at least a codified annexation policy for these standards, but it is the council's, I guess, boilerplate minimums is that we're asking for at least a percentage, in 50%, in some cases 100% like this for the 50 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. This would be the first motion for ordinance 2025-10, if anyone would like to make it.
I'll move to forward a
Yeah.
positive recommendation to Moab City Council on Moab Ordinance 2025-10, an ordinance to approve the annexation of property located at 611 Cermak, Moab, Utah 84532.
Okay, we have a motion from Carolyn. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, a second from Miles. Any other discussion for the motion on the table? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Fantastic. Nice to have the pre-annexation agreement kind of smooth things along for sure. All right, our next item is number 5, future agenda items. What do we have?
I think I'll jump in at least as far as scheduling purposes first. I know it's been a bit of a back and forth, including having this special meeting as city council has been scheduling public hearings and we're trying to coordinate around that. We had intended to hold the master fee schedule review for planning commission for particular aspects of the master fee schedule update at this meeting, but had some confusion that it would have required a public hearing at this body, which we've found out does not. So we had waited, but we had even waited too long to get it on this agenda. So now we're back on for the 12th to hold that. I know that had been circulated as a less optimal date to hold our regular meeting, but as they're teed up for the 22nd, it would either be the 12th for our regular meeting, or we would have to have another special meeting to get this recommendation in prior to the city council. So really sorry about about a month's worth of back and forth with all these meetings and coordinating. Usually it comes through the process pretty linear through staff to PC up to CC, but a lot of these are being kind of premeditated at an admin level where they're scheduling, anticipating we're having meetings. So when we had canceled our 22nd of May, I believe it was, it threw them off a little bit. So anyway, I think my Zoom screen quit. I am proposing that we continue our regular meeting if we are able to maintain a quorum to review the master fee schedule. It's very lightweight. There's not a lot of huge lifts or major changes. There some clarifications within the building fee schedule of things that just had happened to get missed as far as minimum fees from an update in 24. From the planning side, there were some alignments we had a number of platting exercises that ranged from $25, or excuse me, a minimum of 200 with a $25 multiple, up to 350 with a $50 multiple. The plating exercises shall be consistent as they are the same process. So that's the amendment we're making with those. It will come a time that we're going to do a full audit. We've already provided an in-house audit. We're easily the cheapest place to develop as far as fees and permits, despite everyone saying we're too expensive. So, there's communities of about the same size people that aren't hosting 2 million people per year, that are charging double what we are easily. So, come build while the getting's good, I guess. Not that we're going to go crazy high, but we do not cover our expenses with our fees, and that's the intent of the fees, is that we're covering our expenses. So we've been through additional revenue sources covering these processes. So just getting us back up to a floating level of maybe not even break even, but just a little bit more reasonable. So that's not happening yet, but hopefully in the future. That's all I had as far as that item. Maybe I'm looking over to Johanna as far as DRT and possible items.
Yeah, be assured, guys, we are working very hard. We've got a lot of subdivisions and we've got a lot of amendments, but nothing in the pipeline that's coming to you soon. Perhaps a special exception. Haven't gotten that submittal yet, but we've been discussing. Other than that, there's nothing DRT wise.
Okay. At least teed up immediately for the 12th.
Correct.
Like we said, we're in a stage of probably about 10 projects right now that are going in the back and forth DRT realm that are site plan related, or some of them are site plan related.
So we are anticipating having a meeting on the 12th just to discuss the fee schedule.
Yeah, so if I may, we can open that up to a little bit of discussion now. That is I think, direction that we've been given, is to move that way. If we're unable to maintain a quorum for that meeting, we can look at alternatives. But right now, I know some of us were already, because of this runaround, we were saying we're going to hit it tonight. We won't need to meet next week. But that turns out not to be the case. So get to see you guys twice in a row.
Yeah.
If we have quorum. I know we talked really briefly before the meeting of availability, but it sounds like kind of general nods that I think we'll have quorum.
I can be here.
Okay.
Okay, there's
So-
at least 3. I might have to bounce early.
Okay.
If we're not finished. That's really my issue, is I have somewhere to be at 7.
Yeah.
Perfect. But
Again, it's
Yeah.
master fee schedule where
I think it's heavy, or like.
barring no more technical issues that puts us 15-20 minutes late, we should be done just that quick.
Fabulous.
But I
Well-
won't be here the 26th.
Good to know.
That's
Okay.
The regularly scheduled
The
fall,
next one.
the like 2 weeks down the road.
I will also not be here the 26th.
Oh,
Okay.
And I'll be I don't land in Junction until 5 o'clock, so I don't think I can even
Do
Zoom.
the remote. Okay. I think we should be able to work around that. As of right now, I'm not.
if only we had a 5th planning commissioner.
Brings us to our next point.
Have we had anybody? Oh,
Oh.
gosh.
Not that I'm aware of. 0 applicants that I'm aware of, which kind of died out. Well, I don't know how else to plug it better. Every meeting, we're plugging it.
Need Luke's term to end so he can join the planning commission.
Yay.
He's already here anyways.
Right? I
Uh,
thought.
But yeah, that will be something I think in the near future we're going to, with the 3 of you guys, and then whoever hopefully we can get also be continue to coordinate. So if we get down to a temporary quorum of 3 or temporary commission of 3, we'll have to be a little bit strategic about how we schedule, which I'm open to as much as you guys. I think with
Yeah.
remote participation, I think we'll make anything available to make these work. Keep the process flowing.
Yeah,
for
and
applicant.
I don't anticipate not being able to remotely participate.
Okay.
It's literally just in-person participation starting at the end of July. Might be
Yep.
complicated.
Weeping.
So,
Okay. Alrighty.
all right, I will now adjourn this Wednesday, June 4th, 2025 special meeting of the Moab City Planning Commission at 5:45 PM. Thanks, everyone.